Columbus never made it here, but Amerigo Vespucci did. And he wrote very specifically about his encounters with the giants. So it was from that moment that I realized, well, there must be something here. He described what they look like, where they got their water from, what their weapons looked like, and especially and most importantly, just how tall they were. As a matter of fact, he mentions that they were taller. If they were kneeling, they would be taller than him if he were standing.
Are you mad?
I'm talking to giants at the moment.
Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you?
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want.
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
All things continually lead back to serpents, dragons, fairies, Nephilim, and fallen angels.
In the distance looms a mystical mountain.
As Mike Heiser used to say, if it's in the Bible and it's weird, it's probably important.
At its peak, a great fire burns, concealing the Prometheus lens.
This development of this knowledge that's being talked about within the mystery schools.
An ancient artifact said to reveal the hidden truth within a deliberately darkened world.
There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world.
Join us as we travel and explore the vast unknown. It's a hero's journey with dragons to slay, damsels to save, and innumerable treasures to hoard. Torches high.
The Smithsonian, they caught wind of a giant skeleton, would send their agents out to get it.
But it takes courage to move forward, to move out of the shadows, out of the unreality that we think of as reality.
We are all on the hero's journey.
Mankind has been in contact with and influenced by extraterrestrials.
Leave the sentient mound of bull feathers out of it.
You know, look at it from a different perspective.
Hey, what is happening? What is up? Hold out your glass. We are about to fill it up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens Podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Justin. Here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus lens to take a second look at everything. Well, guys, you got the emails, you got the messages on Facebook, so if you're not here, it is just your fault. You dropped the ball. Don't blame your mom. Don't blame your dad. It's not your dad's fault. We're here. We're with Heather Arnold, and we're going to be diving into the giants of Aruba. Heather, thank you so much for coming back.
Oh, thank you for having me again. It's such an honor.
Well, for those that maybe have not seen the episode that we have done together, go ahead and just introduce yourself and expertise and a little bit about yourself.
Great, sure. So my name is Heather Arnold. I've been researching the giants of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. It has to be now maybe going on 17 years, almost 18 years. I first began researching the giants here where I live currently in Aruba. I began the research on the giants when I first moved to Aruba in 2005, and I wanted to start a tour company. And I wanted to have historically accurate tours. And I found it quite challenging to get information, find information. There isn't a lot of information out there publicly. And I found all different descriptions of the past in Aruba, not going back very far, probably just maybe 500 years, where the most recent Cacateo native population from Venezuela came over to Aruba. But I knew there was a much more ancient history here in Aruba because of all of the sites, the prehistoric sites that are in existence here. For example, there are caves with many petroglyphs, pictographs, balanced stones, and graves, ancient graves. So I knew that had to be some sort of a rich history here. And it was just through continual research and examining all different um, peer-reviewed studies and trying to get my hands on as much archaeological evidence and firsthand accounts that I possibly could, that I came across the letters from the New World from Amerigo Vespucci, and in it he talks about his journey to the island of the giants, which it's Bonaire, which was Aruba first, and then Curacao. So he through this excellent book, this journal of all of his accounts of everywhere he stopped with his team when they came over in the second journey after Columbus had come. Columbus never made it here, but Amerigo Vespucci did. And he wrote very specifically about his encounters with the giants. So it was from that moment that I realized, well, there must be something here. He described what they look like, where they got their water from, what their weapons look like, and especially and most importantly, just how tall they were. As a matter of fact, he mentions that they were taller. If they were kneeling, they would be taller than him if he were standing. So it was from that point that I really began to delve as deeply as I could into the archaeological evidence. And I scoured medical libraries. I contacted antique bookshops in Europe to get some of these studies. I mean, a lot of these studies are so impossible to get. I think in some cases I might be the only person to have copies of some of these studies. So I compiled, it has to be at least 100 studies at this point, and all of them pretty much mention these artifacts and these bones that were discovered here in Aruba of giants. And they discuss not just in Aruba, though, in Bonaire and Curacao as well, which are the ABC islands. We're right off the coast of South America. And these the bones, everything, the artifacts, some of them are on display, some of them are still in the ground or in their places where they were found. But it was through all this research of the archaeological reports that I found out about the giants and have been researching them ever since.
Mm. Well, I know two of the people that we have in the chat have definitely seen your episodes, probably the one I did with you on the dig and this one. So I don't want to hog up all your time. This is a Q&A after all. So you guys got a question for Heather while you got her?
Yes, I do. So I've been following you around for a bit, and I do have a question about your knowledge on what you have studied or researched so far based off of the DNA of these giants and how they apply to today. What have you found out about that?
Yeah, that's great. In 2002, there was a genetic test done, and the test was done by these geneticists, and their main goal was actually studying the modern population of Aruba to determine their genetic makeup. So one of they had to do it on Aruba as opposed to Bonaire and Curacao because there was a lot more mixing of different people on those islands due to the influx of slaves. Because those two islands have a lot more rain, you're able to actually farm and have cattle, not cattle, the islands are too small, but, to practice husbandry. So there was too much of the DNA mixture going on those two islands. But in Aruba, there weren't a lot of slaves, really, because there are no crops. There's nothing. We live literally on a desert island. So that one of the qualifications to be a participant in the DNA study was that you're going back as far as your great grandmother. They could not have left the island. So all going back to obviously they tested the mitochondrial DNA, and they went back as far as your great grandmother, and if everyone was living always on the island. So they only got a small group of people, but still it was rather large, who agreed to participate and met the qualification of having relatives have never left the island. And they've determined that all of these people had an ancient form of DNA. And this DNA was traced back to the giants. It was part of their genome that could not be connected to any modern people, and no known relatives in modern times. So it was the determination of the investigators that this DNA was ancient and was probably of the giants. So knowing that, a lot of people here in Aruba still have that ancient DNA of the giants in them, which would explain where the giants went, because they seemingly disappeared. But my hypothesis, which seems to be backed by science, is that the giants, which there weren't a lot of them, they were the elite ruling class, but there weren't a lot of giants. I think probably difficult pregnancies was a main one. But they ended up, I think, pretty much mating with the average statured people who were also here at the same time during the later periods of the giants, going into like the 1400s AD. And I think that's essentially what occurred, that they didn't necessarily fall off the face of the earth or be taken up by aliens, that they actually, in order to survive and keep the species going, just began to mate with average statured humans. And so that would explain why modern Arubans still have this DNA. But to think of what is fascinating to me, how strong the DNA must be. I mean, for it to last for so long, from all these generations ago, in ancient history, and now still be within the people of Aruba, it's actually quite fascinating.
Wow, they must have some strong DNA. They got some strong
Yes,
DNA. And like you said, if they haven't
definitely.
gone anywhere, I just think it's so interesting. Like you said, there's all these theories where they just disappear, alien abductions, this, that, and the other.
Right.
When really, like in its islands, it's so amazing that people could just stay in the same spot and keep it concentrated as long as possible, and then the intermingling.
Right. And also, one thing to keep in mind too is that Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao were once one island, and they were not attached to the mainland. There are stories of a underwater cave that stretches from Aruba to Venezuela. So that could essentially be sort of a land bridge, although there's no direct evidence of that. But there is evidence that the three islands were one. And through a series of three mega tsunamis, the islands were separated, and the geological evidence shows that all three islands were one, and that they were separated by these three mega tsunamis. And interestingly enough, just a couple of days ago, there was a very strong earthquake off the coast of Cuba, which we felt here in Aruba. And we actually did have a tsunami warning, which was quite unnerving, because I don't even have a plan. But I assume now I'll have to have a tsunami plan. But it is quite interesting, the seismic activity that is going on here since I've been living here for the second time. So it's been 2 years, actually, on the 22nd of November. We have had many earthquakes here. So I think between the sunspots and everything is aligning, it's definitely heating up in terms of the seismic activity here. But thankfully, nothing major yet. But you have to keep in mind that there are tsunamis that come through here, and these three mega tsunamis, starting as early as 2,500 BC, separated the three islands. So there could have been people on the islands at that time. There can be, and still may be, a lot of artifacts under the ocean. So, and the ocean, we have a trench here that's so deep. I mean, I don't think there would be any way to even do any type of excavation at this point with the technology we have. So it's quite interesting that these islands were one, and to think that there was this population of ancient prehistoric giants, maybe even at that time, and how many there might have been at that time on the islands, and what it must have been like if they were alive during this time of the tsunami, and then this total separation of the three islands. It's quite interesting to think about. I think about it often, what it must have been like. So then if there were more giants, and you could see then how this population could have grown. But eventually I do think that once that separation occurred, there were giants living on each island separately. Although they had similar burial techniques, petroglyphs and pictographs, and other ritual, it's obvious that they were living separately. And it's actually quite interesting that they still retained the same rituals and culture of death, etc., that they did when they were probably all together as one on the three islands.
And you can kind of see the progression too. It's almost like this set of giants is later, because we know while you're interbreeding, that DNA strand, it disintegrates and gets diluted, but it's over long periods of time. And I think that's fascinating when you were talking about they were just interbreeding and troubles with the birth and everything like that. But then on the other side of South America, over in Peru, their stories talk about this race of giants came on boats and ships from the east, and that they were, cannibalistic and warlike and tried taking the women, but these sets were more pure. So that, it was a lot longer back in time, but they were so large that they would kill the women trying to mate with them, and they couldn't. And it said that they ended up in their legends that they turned to sodomy. They started sodomizing each other. And then the great sky god brought down storms and lightning and stuff from heaven and took them out that way.
Wow, that's interesting. Yes, it's interesting too what you bring up Peru, because I've been to Peru. I saw the Paracas skulls, and once you see them, you realize, well, the skulls were look like giant skulls just because of the cranial elongation, but they aren't very, very big skulls, which is interesting. Yeah, that's about the size, actually. That looks like one that's in the museum in Lima. Oh,
yeah, this is a replica of that one.
Yes, wow, yeah, I like that one. I love the bump in the front. Yeah, but these, the giants here in Aruba also had elongated skulls. And the difference between the cranial elongation in the skull you just showed in Paracas and the skulls here is that, unlike the skulls in Paracas, where the elongation appears to go upwards, the elongation of the skulls here in Aruba goes up and then back. So it's a very different looking skull in terms of the elongation, and that all of that weight of the cranium is now on the back, in the back of the head. And due to that anatomical difference, the neck, where the neck enters into the skull, has to be in a different position as well to accommodate that extra weight in the back of the skull. So I think the Paracas skulls also had some sort of a modification anatomically for where the neck.
That foramen
Yes.
magnum was all the way at the back. Yeah, where a normal humans is here.
Right there,
And
exactly.
and how they talk about even the head binding ones that they find doesn't change the position of where the neck mounts to the head. This was a genetic thing.
They've tried to disprove that you could see in the archaeological record, and if you read them in succession, you'll see like the desperation of the archaeologists when they're trying to explain away the giants and explain away the elongation of their skulls. And they're desperately looking for evidence of skull binding. And interestingly, they didn't find any. They'd never have found any. They admit this in their reports. And they also then have to conclude that the cranial elongation must be natural, because they ended up finding a small baby, I believe it was a fetus, with this cranial elongation. And if you're going to do head binding, that will take at least 6 months to get the skull to be elongated or begin the elongation process. And to see that the baby was born that way, that was the way they were able to determine that it was natural. The elongation was natural and was not from binding of the skulls.
Hi everybody, I'm Chris Vick. I'm the founder of Squatch Survival Gear, and today I'm here to talk to you about some of our most popular packs. In 2017, I founded Squatch Survival Gear because I was tired of seeing low quality mass-produced packs flooding the American market. I decided I'd make a pack that was 100% designed and manufactured in the United States, and today I'm here to talk to you about some of our most popular packs. This is the Night Howler. It was designed for EDC and travelers. As you can see, it's small. It's roughly 10 by 12 inches. It's designed for everyday carry. The pass-through pad allows you to put it on your luggage when you travel. This is the Rougarou. Very civilianized, lots of attachment points. This is a 25-liter pack. We designed it for a little lighter load. If you need more than the Night Howler, you should try this. This is the Mothman, very similar to the Rougarou, roughly the same size, but it's designed for carrying a much heavier load. The removable waist belt will help you carry that extra load. You've also got your retaining strap if you're going to take that on a travel trip. This is the Kakamora. This would be your first 72-hour pack, as we used to say in the Army. It comes with an internal frame, totally adjustable straps, heavily padded. You can carry heavy loads, carry lots of gear. This is the Rockade. It's a 45-liter pack. Same internal frame, same great padded straps that you like, with a few extra features. If you're wondering what's with all the crazy names, well, that's because finding 100% American made is as hard as finding Bigfoot in the woods. When you're ready to carry our packs, contact us at squatchsurvivalgear.com or any of our social medias.
Hey guys, you found yourself at the end of the line, and this means that you're not an all-access pass holder, so I gotta play the Gandalf here and slam it down and say, you shall not pass. But hey, if you'd like to join us on the hero's journey and get the rest of this episode, and not only this episode, you get 48 hours early to every single episode in the future, and gain access to an entire library of members-only content, access to the private Facebook community, and monthly Q&As with authors and speakers and researchers that I've had on the show. Head on over to PrometheusLensPodcast.com and sign up. It's quick, it's easy, and I'm only asking you to sacrifice a happy meal once a month. You're without an excuse. Homeless people come up with $5 to $10 a day for their addictions. Nobody's that hard up. Torch is high, guys.